2016 A Taste of New York honoree, Ron Dermer, for your extraordinary commitment and dedication to the Jewish people. And it says, those that lead others to righteousness will shine as the stars forever and ever. Daniil.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now I can speak? Well, first of all, let me thank Paul for really not ripping me to shreds up here, because the material that he has is priceless. There are a lot of governments in the world that would love to have that material, so I appreciate your restraint. I also want to thank so many of you for being here tonight. I mean, some of you I really have not seen in 25 years. It's a good thing that I haven't seen you in that long. I know why I've been avoiding you for that much time, but I appreciate you coming out here as a show of support, not just to me personally, but also to the program. Now, we began this, Paul and I, in 1993, pretty much to get Menachem and Ephraim out of the house, because they were relentless, and they were playing pool nonstop, and they say, we want to start this program. And they say, will you leave if we actually help you start the program? And they said yes, and that's how we got them out, and we could get along with the rest of our year. But this is a very important program, in all seriousness, and a program designed to strengthen Jewish identity on campuses. I'm very proud that we had some hand in doing it. I'm really honored that there are so many people here who have worked very hard to ensure that this is a successful program, not just on Penn's campus, but on campuses around the country. I said before that I see some friends here. Where's Jason Panzer? Yes. So Jason told me before I spoke, he doesn't obviously speak publicly that much, but Jason told me, he says, if you mention me, I'm going to double my donation. So now I've just mentioned you. That's a cheap hit. But look, one thing at Penn, we had a fraternity, a lot of my fraternity brothers are here, and I really appreciate you coming here, because I know you've got a lot of other things to do. We were, I think, maybe 86 out of 90 brothers in the house were Jewish. It's a huge number. Is Tags here by any chance? He was like the one non-Jewish, or one of the few, and he was like more pro-Israel than anyone, which goes to show you. But we all came from different backgrounds. But actually, if I could think about one thing that united everybody, they were proud. They were proud of being Jewish. Didn't matter what their background, Reform, conservative. I was pretty much the only one who came from a more Orthodox background, but they were proud. And they were proud Americans as well. And you know, this country, I say, as someone born and raised here, is really a unique country for Jews. And a lot of Jews sometimes maybe take it for granted. And the greatness of America can be summed up in less than a sentence, in less than a word, in less than a letter. It's actually a hyphen. That hyphen between Jewish and American. And the hyphen is unique here. And there are people here who come from South Africa or come from Australia and others, and they'll tell you, and those of you who know history know this, Jews throughout history had to choose. They could strengthen their own Jewish identity and stay true to it, or they could become part of the broader society. America was the one place that gave the Jewish people the opportunity to do both. To both be a proud Jew and an identified Jew, and also to join the larger society. But we are a unique generation, and most people here are under 45. We are a unique generation that not only we live in a time when the Jews, there's a strong Jewish community in America, but we live at a time when there is a Jewish state. 100 generations of Jews dreamed to live at a time when there would be a sovereign Jewish state. And we are a generation, the third actually, that is privileged to live at a time when there is a sovereign Jewish state. And what that means is that the Jewish people have the ability to defend themselves. That's new. We didn't have that for a couple thousand years, and we were beaten around pretty badly because of that. We have a voice. I've got a big one, big mouth, that I try to deploy for the state of Israel. And we have an ability also to take Jews in from around the world in Israel. You know, there's a lot of rising tide of anti-Semitism in Europe, and a lot of people ask questions, but one question they don't ask is, where are those Jews going to go? And the reason why they don't ask it is because Israel's an answer. It may not be the answer, but it's an answer. It's not a question anymore. And it was a question that was haunting our people for a long time. So you have a community here. We have a Jewish state. And it's critically important to strengthen both. Now, when Israel was established in 1948, 5% of the world's Jews lived in Israel. 5. That's it. Today, Israel is the largest Jewish community in the world. Has about 43% of the world's Jews. America is second with maybe 41 or 42%. The largest Jewish city in the world is still New York. Tel Aviv and Jerusalem hasn't caught up to New York. But together, the Jewish community in America and the Jewish community in Israel account for over 80% of the world's Jews. So these two communities are vital for securing the Jewish future. And it is so important today to strengthen both communities. You know, one of my predecessors as ambassador to the U.S. was Yitzhak Rabin, was ambassador for 5 years between 1968 and 1973. And they asked him, a lot of different communities, Jews would come up and say, what should we do for Israel? What should we do for Israel? And he always said the same answer. He said, educate your children about Judaism, strengthen your identity. Because the stronger your identity is, the stronger your connection to Israel. So when I hear that people are strengthening Jewish identity, what I see them is supporting Israel. They're ensuring that the next generation will be connected to Israel. And I think that this is so important now because we are now living at a time where there is a resurgence of anti-Semitism. And people have avoided that discussion for a long time. But the truth is, it should not surprise anybody because we are returning to a historical norm. The Holocaust has in some ways distorted the Jewish people's view of our own history because it was such a seismic event. It was such a powerful loss that it blocks out everything else that had happened before that. But you have 20 centuries of anti-Semitism. And what the last few years have shown is that we are now going back to what was the historical norm. And the aberration was the half century after the Holocaust where it was politically incorrect to go after Jews. Right now, it's not politically incorrect. But what you see, what they do is they try to hide the hostility towards the Jewish people behind the hostility to the Jewish state. The old anti-Semitism where you single out Jews and you hold them to a different standard, where you demonize them, treat them as the enemy of mankind, that's what's happening to how Israel is being perceived in different quarters and how it's being treated. To a double standard, the demonization of Israel, all these wild charges against Israel that are not true. And you see it happen and beginning to happen more and more on college campuses with the BDS movement, which is an anti-Semitic movement. That's what it is. Because it tries to hold Israel to a standard it holds no other country. You know, I get asked this question all the time. Somebody will try some BDS initiative somewhere, and those of you who don't know, that's to boycott, divest, and sanction Israel. And they say, what do you think about it? And the first thing I ask is this organization, that's a national organization or an international organization, is Israel the 51st state, the 71st state, the 121st country on their list to boycott? Because if it is, then I say to myself, well, at least this group has a principle. They're applying it to countries around the world, and they also included Israel. I won't accuse them of anti-Semitism. I'll just accuse them usually of just being ignorant or wrong, not having the facts. And I'll try to argue them to death, and I do that well, and get them the facts. But if I find out that there's an organization, like a Christian church group or an academic group, that decides to single out Israel for boycott, divestment, or sanction alone among the countries of the world, that's anti-Semitism, and it's outrageous, and it has to be fought. The fact that this is happening, there was a Christian group a few months ago that decided, some pastor, I suppose, woke up one morning and he looked around the Middle East and he sees that these ancient Christian communities are being decimated. The Christians are being decapitated. They're literally running for their lives throughout the Middle East. And there's one country in the Middle East where Christians are safe and free, with a population 5 times larger than it was in 1948, and that's Israel. And this pastor in a supreme act of moral idiocy, decides we are going to boycott or divest from Israel. You know, we live in a world where there are dozens of countries where people are shot, academics, for their beliefs, for researching what they want or for saying and teaching what they want to teach. But you have academic organizations that will single Israel out, where people are free to write what they want, research what they want, say what they want. That's anti-Semitism, and it has to be fought. And this is not just a fight for Israel, it's a fight for both of us. And here's something very strange has happened over the last few years. You know, the early Zionists who thought about Israel, and people in ZBT here know that ZBT actually was founded in 1897. It was founded by a bunch of Zionist rabbis, the same year that Herzl, the Theodor Herzl, the founder of modern Zionism, the visionary of modern Zionism, that he had his first Zionist Congress, was the same year that ZBT was founded, as a Jewish fraternity, to allow the Jews to partake in, I suppose, wild parties along with everyone else. But Herzl, he was a great visionary, but he was wrong about anti-Semitism. Why? Because he thought the reason why there was anti-Semitism in the world is that the Jews were a minority everywhere and a majority nowhere. And he thought that if we have a state of our own, we will be accepted like the other peoples of the world. We will be treated like the other peoples of the world. And what is ironic, that 100 years later, Herzl has actually been flipped on its head. Because then, people thought the reason why Jews are hated is because we do not have a state. Now, people believe the reason Jews are hated is because we do have a state. Then, the chants of the anti-Semites were Jews go to Palestine. Now the chants of the anti-Semites are Jews get out of Palestine. But it's important to remember, even though Israel did not end anti-Semitism, it did one thing that it gave the Jewish people. It didn't end hatred towards the Jewish people. It gave us the ability to fight back. That's the difference. That's what Israel did for the Jewish people. It gave us the ability to fight back on the battlefield by having soldiers fighting for the first time in 2,000 years, Jewish soldiers, almost from the time of the Maccabees. And it gave us a voice. It gave me this. I get to go on CNN or give a speech and fight back. We had no voice. We had no power. But this is not a fight for Israel alone. It's a fight for all of you as well. As a proud Jewish community, what you need to do is fight back. And you need to fight back on the campuses. And you need to invest in Jewish identity. You need to strengthen this community as much as possible because that wave is coming. And history has taught the Jewish people that when a wave comes, don't lower your head and hope that the storm is going to pass. Stand very proud and unbowed and meet it head on. And Israel will continue to do that, and I hope that all of you will continue to do it right here in America. Thank you.